Hey my friends, welcome back to my channel and another video. My name is Alyssa Burke. I am an artist, author, and teacher, and today I have a different video for you all. There's no art tutorial, there's no process video. I've got more of those coming in the future, so if you're here for the art, come back. I promise we've got more fun inspiration all summer long. But today I'm doing something I do once in a while on my channel. It's actually been a while since I've done this, where I sit down and have a chat with my community about what it looks like to peel back the curtain of being a working artist and what some of the moments and things that have happened behind the scenes for me have gotten me to where I'm at today. So for those of you who are new to me or my channel, I'm an artist, I make art, I sell art, but a big portion of what I do in my creative business is teaching online art classes. I now have a library of over about 150 unlimited access art classes that you can take, register, work through at your own pace at any given time. And over the years, I've built up this library of different concepts, techniques, projects, mediums, and it's something that has grown so large that I'm able to support my family, brought my husband home 12 years ago from his structural engineering job. We've created a really flexible, creative life based around art and creativity. And today I'm sharing with you a pivotal moment in my own creative journey where I accidentally created a successful teaching business that was never in my goals, never in my plans being an artist. And I'm hoping some of the things in this video bring you a little bit of inspiration when it comes to maybe following unexpected little moments that take you to all sorts of creative places that you weren't planning. So before we dive in, I want to get something out of the way that is probably going to make a difference in the things that I share, and that is my age. I'm 50. I just turned 50 back in March, and while I'm older, I don't feel old. I just have been walking this earth for quite a while, long enough for me to be trying all sorts of different things, from different creative jobs to trial and error to failing for years and then having success for a few more, starting all over again, reinventing things. I've had a lot of time to work through a lot of experiments, goals, and trying out ideas when it comes to my art, creativity, and growing and building a business. So I don't want anybody to think, especially if you're younger than me or you're just coming at your art fresh out of college or you're jumping into a new goal with creativity, sometimes things just take time. And I am living proof that small steps, maybe a slow journey, still equals something really amazing if you just are open and willing to explore lots of different things. Second thing I want to get out of the way before I dive in is that not everybody wants to monetize art or turn their art into a creative business, and that's okay. I get the best of both worlds over here. I actually make a ton of time and space for personal art that never gets sold or shared or seen. It's just mine, and it's my place to work through. And then I've got other things that I am perfectly willing and comfortable sharing and monetizing within the framework of a business. And it's really important to acknowledge that not everybody wants to turn their art or craft into something they sell, and that is perfectly fine. But if you're here and you're gonna watch this video, you might be interested in what it has looked like for me to build a successful online art teaching business. And I'm hoping that you hang with me for this video. And I'm hoping that you find a little bit of inspiration, or at the very least, a little bit of camaraderie. I started my journey as an artist off when I was about 4 years old. That was the first time I can remember that I absolutely loved drawing, and I wanted to draw and create as much as humanly possible. I was really lucky to have parents who are also artists. They are potters, and I grew up around a lot of creative crafters and artisans, and it was totally normal to be watching the adults around me making stuff, selling it, having success, having financial failures, struggles, as well as lots of milestones within their lives. It was super normal for me to look at everybody around me and go, hey, I think I might want to do that. And I love to draw and create. So I spent my childhood doing a lot of art, lots of drawing, creating, learning, and my parents always fostered that. All the way through elementary and high school, I was constantly making art, taking art classes, and on the path to being some kind of professional artist. Back in the 80s and 90s, I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't know what it could turn into. All I knew is I wanted a creative career. And I moved on to college and ended up majoring in painting and printmaking. And when I left college, I thought for sure I was going to be an artist. I was going to make art, show it in galleries, and start building my career, making money to pay my bills. But it didn't quite work out that way. And like most creatives out there, whether it's visual artists or musicians, actors, poets, you often have to have a day job to fund or keep you afloat to be able to make your art. And that's what I did for many years. From about age 19, 20 to all the way into my 30s, I was always juggling a day job with all of my art goals on the side, always trying to build something in my free time. And the great part about having day jobs was that it gave me my income to pay those bills, to be able to buy groceries and live like we do, but also have the safety net to take risks and mess around with the art and the way that I might want to grow a creative business on the side. For many, many years, I juggled marketing jobs. I juggled working in museums and galleries with all the stuff that I was making in all of my extra hours, making products, trying to sell them in stores, making products, selling them at craft shows, making products and art and trying to turn them into a wholesale line. I have tried everything out there when it comes to art. And I did have a lot of different success. I've been able to write multiple books. I've been on TV shows with art and craft. I've done so many different things in the art world. But none of those things actually provided an income that made it possible for me to walk away from my day job. And for many years, I kind of just accepted that. I accepted that, well, I've got some pretty decent day jobs that enable me to still make art and have this side hustle. I think I'm okay. But there was something inside of me that wanted what that little kid always wanted, which was to just make art all the time. I wanted that to be my job. And while I had the opportunity to have some pretty cool day jobs that were creative, I wanted more creativity in my day. And so I kept picking away at my goals and trying things. If you meet with me, if you're in my business classes, I call it throwing spaghetti at the wall. I just tossed everything out there to see what would stick, what felt right, what was working, and what wasn't. And I really was on a little bit of a path of making some side hustle income, making products and selling them on Etsy. Till one day, a good friend of mine who was a junior high teacher came to me and asked if I would be willing to come teach a couple of workshops to some of her students. Now, she said that she felt like I'd be a good match for the topic that she was teaching. She thought I might be a fun, creative teacher to bring in with her junior hires. And at the time, I was like, I'm not a teacher. I make art, I sell art. I didn't study teaching. I don't really know anything about teaching people, let alone young people. But she was a really good friend and I trusted her and I was like, why not? I might as well feel like I was doing her a favor. And so I put together a fun little workshop for a few of her classes and I went in and taught these kids some messy painting techniques. Now, when I tell this story, I always get little goosebumps because it was such a pivotal moment in my journey. And it was a moment that I was willing to just do something before I was ready, do something without perfection, and just see where it took me. I also honestly felt like I was doing somebody a favor, but the key moment happened when I taught the first session and something in me clicked. I absolutely fell in love by the end of the day with teaching these kids. It was so much fun, and it was so much fun to see little humans or young humans creating art who had never maybe gotten to paint before or be messy or work on a canvas. By the end of that first session, I was like, this is cool, and I could see myself doing this. I taught a couple more sessions for my friend, and at the end of it, she came to me and said, you might want to look into teaching. You're a really great teacher, and my kids loved you. And it planted a seed in my head to maybe go, that's something I haven't tried yet. Maybe there's a different way for me to practice and get creative in this world when it comes to all of my creative goals. And so I started volunteering my time and teaching at community organizations pretty much anywhere and everywhere I could to really practice my skills talking in front of people, creating in front of people, and teaching people things. And what ended up happening is I loved it even more. It ended up being something that I wasn't making money from initially, but I was gaining a bunch of experience just sharing my process, my style, my medium, all the things that I had collected over all the years of making and learning art, and sharing it with people who didn't normally make art. And it was so special and such a pivotal moment in my journey, not only as an artist, but as somebody building this little side hustle career as a working artist. I saw that there was potential in my teaching, in the way that I was teaching. Up until this point, I thought in order to be a teacher, I might have to go back to school and get my credentials, and I was not interested in that at all. I actually wanted to teach classes in my style, in my way, without anybody telling me the right or wrong way to do it. And I didn't know that there was actually lots of spaces and places that I could be doing this. And so I started diving into teaching live classes and eventually monetize those classes. I traveled the country teaching at different art retreats. I taught at all sorts of different local little shops, places. I went into a phase of anywhere and everywhere I could teach. I was doing it in my free time outside of my day job. Over the years, I built up my teaching so much that I'd have to use my vacation time in order to go teach. It was actually ending up being something that had a lot of momentum. It was super fun. And I was starting to feel like I had finally, after all these years, found a pathway that just felt like it fit perfectly. And then the housing market crashed and we entered a recession. And a lot of the retreats and teaching opportunities that I had started to shut down. Customers and community members taking those classes didn't have the money or as much money to pay for things. Suddenly I was back to square one thinking, okay, now what? A lot of these opportunities have dried up. I don't want this to end because I love it so much. I need to find another way. And that other way for me was trying to figure out a way that I could teach online for way less of the cost of the retreats and live offerings. People wouldn't have to pay for plane tickets or hotels. And I decided, even back then, 2008, there wasn't a lot of platforms or tech to support teaching online like there is now. I decided just to kind of hack it together with cardboard and duct tape and figure out how I could start offering my teaching online in a virtual setting. I put together my very first class and I was hoping maybe 5 or 10 people would sign up for it online. I ended up having about 50 people, which was super exciting because that was a lot more than people that were in a live class. And I was absolutely over the moon. It felt like a great, great success. And even though the platforms and the tech and the gear wasn't quite what it is now, it still was possible. And I was well on my way to discovering that this might be something that I could do more of. Let's keep trying this. And that's exactly what I did. As I discovered that virtual offerings were perfect for a moment where there was a recession, people were struggling economically and they couldn't pay for high ticket items like the live classes I had been teaching, I started to figure out a really great formula for teaching online. And let me just say, it snowballed. At the time, people weren't really teaching online. There were just a few of us, and we got in before everybody and their mother started offering virtual classes. Nowadays, it's super cool. There's so many classes, so many opportunities to access online. But at the time, I basically got in early and I was able to build something that really grew and evolved. It evolved so much that I started making just as much money in my side hustle of teaching online than I was making at my day job. And I had to make the decision of perhaps eventually walking away so that I have more time to grow this beautiful teaching business that I had worked so hard on. And in 2009, I was able to put in my notice at my day job, walk away and go full time with my art and my teaching business, which opened up so much time in my day to be able to invest my ideas, my time, really play around with so much stuff that I had creatively inside of me to build this business revolving around inspiring and educating people out there. Everything from still teaching classes and volunteering volunteering my time live to teach, to really growing my online virtual teaching, I started building things and building things and building things, creating more classes, turning the ideas that I had for some of my own art into some kind of virtual offering. And over a span of months and years, I slowly built up a very loyal community, a wonderful customer base, and a teaching business that just grew and grew and grew. It grew so much that I was able to bring my husband home from his job in structural engineering. It grew so much that we were able to move away and relocate here in my hometown on the Oregon coast and build a really flexible, creative life. And it's not always easy. In fact, it is filled with tons of challenges. Anybody who's an entrepreneur, anybody who runs a small business, regardless of what they are doing, will tell you there's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of ebbs and flows when it comes to running a business. But my own creative business has enabled me to really be creative all day, every day, but to also share that with other people, which is what I discovered at that really unexpected moment way back when my friend asked me to come teach in her classroom. And I wanted to share 3 things that were incredibly important for me in this pivotal moment in deciding to just take a risk and try teaching. The first is something we hear all the time, but it is start before you are ready. Now, I kind of did a favor for my friend when she asked me to teach. There's no way I was ready to teach. I did not have experience teaching, but I did have experience loving and being passionate about art. I just had never really taken the time to share that with other people. I was nowhere ready to be a teacher. In fact, it took me a lot of years of practicing, again, volunteering my time to discover if I could really keep doing it. But in that moment, I decided to jump into an opportunity before I was ready. If I had been a perfectionist about it, if I had said, oh no, I need to wait and go back to school and figure out how to be a teacher, I never would have had that moment where I realized how special it was to get to share creativity with other people. Starting before I was ready was the most important little moment in this story and in this evolution when it comes to me building something that you see today. I'm so grateful that I was willing to, at the very least, do a favor for somebody I really, really liked. But more than anything, I'm really grateful that in that moment, I was just willing to go share that art with other people and see what happened. The second thing that was super important for me was simply letting my curiosity lead the way. In my entire growth and journey to building a creative business, I've always been super curious. I think those of us that are artists and creatives are curious by nature. We ask ourselves, what will this tool do? Or what happens if I mix this color with this color? Or what would happen if I tried these 2 concepts and paired them together? We are curious by nature, in my opinion, when we make art. And I've always let that kind of lead me through some of the pivots, the transitions, even the side quests I've taken in my own business growth. If I hadn't been curious in this particular example, I never would have said yes. It was once again something that I was willing to go, I wonder what will happen, or I wonder what this will feel like. And I was willing to see it through. And in that moment when I discovered it was so much fun teaching art to these junior hires, I was then curious, what would this feel like to teach this to adults or to really young children? And I did more of that. I followed that curiosity and really was open to seeing where it led. Thankfully, it led somewhere that made a lot of sense and it fit into my life and my goals. But being curious by nature is such a valuable asset when it comes to figuring out if there's maybe different places or spaces you could take your art or those creative goals. And the third takeaway for me in this moment was just simply sharing what I know. It's easy to feel like you need to be an expert or you need to have all these years under your belt before before you can actually do something. And I actually disagree. I think we all often have something that we have that can be shared with others. And there's maybe somebody out there just waiting for you to show up with an art technique, creative inspiration, something handmade that you give away that might change somebody's life or bring them into your community or perhaps even your creative goals. I find that when you get stuck in feeling like everything has to be perfect, or I need to go back and become an expert in this before I can even try, it can often freeze you in your path and keep you from maybe just trying different things. Well, I am somebody who did have a lot of experience with art. I'm one of those rare people that grew up in art and pursued art. I wasn't somebody who had a lot of experience with teaching, and I was willing to just let myself say, hey, I'm not an expert, but I got stuff to share, and I think I might be able to share it in a different way that meets your needs. If I would have gotten stuck on feeling like there was some perfection or something I needed to go back and do before I said yes to the friend asking me to teach for her, I may not be where I am today. So I think it's important that whatever you have to share, there might be an audience, there might be a community, there might be a place for it, even if you're not an expert. The cool thing about creativity is that it doesn't always take us to places we expect, and that is an absolute gift. I never had a plan in my brain of being an art teacher. It was never in the plan. I did not set out to go to school, to study art in college, and then turn around and go teach things that just pop into my head that I want to share with the world. I had an unexpected moment that unexpectedly led me to a place that I had no idea would fit perfectly into my life, my creative goals, and who I am as a person. So if you're showing up today watching this video, you may not have goals of teaching classes or turning your art into a business, but I'm hoping that at the very least, the takeaway is that when you are leaving space for the unexpected, things that might be unpredictable, for things that maybe you weren't in the plan, really cool things can actually happen. And that's the magic that comes with creative thinking, making art, and seeing where that process and that journey takes you. If you're somebody who's been teaching online art classes, or if you've been following your own creative dreams, I want to hear about them in the comments below. You might not be doing what I'm doing or interested in building a business like I have, but I would love to hear any stories, any little tidbits that you have from your own journey that comes from your own art and your own creative process. Drop those experiences in the comments below. Hope you all enjoyed this video. I'll be back next time with a fun process video. In the meantime, I hope you're making and finding space for all that creativity.
If you made it to the end of this video, and if you're curious about teaching online, I just opened the only session this year of my class, The Art of Teaching Online, a 6-month experience filled with lessons, live group coaching, and support when it comes to creating your own online classes and virtual offerings. You can head to the description box for more information.